Today on What Went Wrong, we dice some peppers. Hi, I'm Brett Mauser, and I've made over 45 feature films and a couple series. And today we're actually going to be talking about one of our series called The Knight Watchmen. And joining us today is a good friend of mine, and we've been working together. Oh my God, is it? I don't even want to think about how many years it's been.
It's been like well over a decade and a half, something like that.
It's creeping up on a couple decades. Wesley Blake, who I think our first film together was Ballerina.
Yeah, it was Ballerina.
And you played the role of Chance, and you came to us via Matt Hasso, so
Right.
he introduced us, and then from there you moved into the Innocent Saga as Jack Hart.
Mm-hmm.
And most recently, we worked together on The Night Watchman.
Right.
And this was a remake or a revisiting, I guess, because I had done a feature version in 2002, 2003 of The Night Watchman.
Mm-hmm.
It was designed to be a series back then, but we ran out of money, so it was just a one feature film kind of a thing. Never quite, I mean, it played on TV in Central Texas. But I didn't have the ability to do the special effects that it really needed to have and things like that.
They're pretty good though. And now I've actually been having a hard time remembering this. You could kind of clear it for me. Mm-hmm. Was the Night Watchman storyline at one point going to be a thread within the saga?
Yes, we actually see Isabella Montoya in the saga, and at that point, because Jax comes to her and talks to her. And we reference Walter Baker.
My dicer is a man named Walter Baker. He's on assignment right now. He should be back tonight.
And we shot some scenes.
I filmed one
with
day as
you
Baker.
as Walter Baker.
Yeah.
And I think it had involved some beta hunters. Mm-hmm. And I think you were in an alley, and then some beta hunters. We didn't see the fight or anything, but so we were leading in that direction. And I don't remember what, but that was like episode 10 of the saga, where we just started. Everything kind of started changing, and we were trying to tie everything together and make it all fit into a feature. And so threads got cut, we changed things around, and it just never happened. So that was your first exposure to Baker, and I know you liked that character.
Instantly. Yeah. Because I think, and again, I feel like after the saga, there was talk about it having its own life.
Yeah.
And from what little I got to play on the one shoot that we did, and then what you showed me, like, the visual effects that you were pulling off of like no budget back then, like before drones were actually a thing, like the ones you were doing like in CG, I was like, I want this so bad. So I had been obsessing over that role for I think like I said 15 years or something. Yeah. I mean I want to play that role forever. So
so eventually it came up that and I can't remember exactly what made me go, okay, it's time to do this. I think we had some success with some of the films, so there was a little bit of a budget there, because that was always the thing. It was Night Watchman. I knew was going to have a budget.
Yeah.
So this time around, we were able to move forward on it. We rented an actual, it wasn't a studio, but it was this office building with like 1,500 square feet. And Joey and I made like 25 sets out of this one area. And one of my favorites was the morgue scene.
Oh yeah.
Because I think it came out great where you're talking to Isabella, but if you move the camera 2 inches in either direction, you realize that there's like a brick wall, or there's a futon, or whatever.
Yeah.
We only had a certain amount we could you could have.
Well, I loved it was the morgue set. And then there was this little desk with a Keurig. I'm like, just sitting, hanging with the dead people, having some coffee.
Well, I was thinking if you have your mortician, they've got their little desk. They're probably going to have their coffee machine and everything.
The whole backstory of the mortician.
See, that he deserves his own, the Night Watchman mortician.
Right. Night Watchman City Morgue.
Hey, if CSI can have like elevator inspector unit, we can have
it.
So the concept of Night Watchman is kind of an homage to those great detective shows that I grew up on, and of course I was a big moonlighting fan.
Oh yeah.
So we brought that kind of in as well, which I think is one of the reasons that I did. When we brought you in for auditions for Walter Baker for the series, that banter and that interaction between you and Isabella. I was like, okay, because we'll get to the story a little bit later, but I wasn't sure whether whether we were going to put you in Wesley, we were going to play you as Wesley Baker. We were sure you were going to be Walter Baker in that, but it was when you had that such great chemistry with Isabella during the car scene audition. I was like, okay, that's exactly what I'm looking for. Let's go for it.
That was easy, right?
I mean, I've had easier.
But it's basically this detective who it's in the future, and the detective is hired to solve crimes, and then when they solve it, they have to send the dicer out to carry out the punishment. Yeah. Yes. And originally, in the original series, the detective was called the Serrano. Mm-hmm. Because I looked up somewhere, and I had like a Spanish to English dictionary one time, and I was looking at it, and it was close to detective. So I thought that was, but it was a Serrano, and being from Texas, it didn't dawn on me at the time that it's a freaking pepper.
I was always wondering why Serrano, because
in some translations somewhere in some crappy English to Spanish dictionary, it said that was like a detective or something. So not only that, but I always loved the idea of somebody who went out and executed being called a dicer. Mm-hmm. So now I got a pepper and a dicer.
Oh, you're my executioner.
Oh, we actually prefer dicer. Executioner sounds so depressing. Dicer sounds so much more fun, kind of like we're making omelets.
So I was like, well, so when it came around to remake it, I was like, no, I got to change this. So I went around, so it's no longer a Serrano. We changed it to Bloodhound, and that was the Sabueso.
That's okay.
So that's where that came from, was it? Because I wanted it to be derogatory in a way. That's something that the Spanish would have been a derogatory thing. That she's like basically like a puta, a bitch.
Okay.
But still have that detective kind of a thing. So a detective would be Bloodhound, the one that follows and gets on the trail. So if I put it, still had sort of a dog analogy, it had a negative context to it in that way that they would call him. So that's where the Sabueso came from.
You're the Sabuesa.
Sabuesa?
Yeah, Sabuesa, the Bloodhound, the detective. You solve the case, sign the warrant, and then you have to personally deliver it to them.
In your casting, you had played Jack Hart in the Innocent Saga, which was one of my favorite characters of all time. Because when I watched the Innocent Saga, I just rewatched it recently, and our scenes.
Oh, so much fun!
I loved working with you on those scenes. And it's sort of like, if I could, I would just have a whole series of us in the 1940s.
The 40s, got it. Yeah, 40s spin-off would have been a blast.
But tell us a little bit about the Jack Hart character, and because I think you and I, we had different ideas. It was going to be a little bit more serious.
Oh, yeah.
But tell me about how you felt like Jack Hart went.
So right before, I think it was right before I got the Jack Hart role. I had done a film. It was my first feature film, I think, and it was called Slayer Pro, and it was I was like a 200, 300-year-old vampire slayer. And I was running this group of like 20 or 30-year-old kids to me. And I remember every line in the script was written with all this like vibrato. It was just like, I could just picture the writer like watching Blade as he, And so I remember there's a part where the line is, we don't run. I knew it was supposed to be this. And I remember thinking, I'm going to play it like Mufasa from The Lion King. I was thinking anyone else reading this at this level would be like, they lean into the obvious. And so that was fresh on my mind. So when I got the Jack Hart role, he was capable, he was a badass, and he was like, he was written as an action dude. And I just remember seeing, from whatever else was in the script, there was already enough of that. There was already so many characters that were, confident, cocky, whatever. And so I remember, I think when it really turned, I played it more like a goofball, but there was a scene where I was screwing with the people on my earwig about the screensaver, and it was supposed to be my character joking about that. And I remember the girl on the other end says, you can't be that stupid. And I ad-libbed the line,
I played sports in high school.
And then from there, I got goofier and goofier, and you were just like, yeah, go with it. And so by the end of the thing, and I never thought of this till recently, he kind of picked up a bit of a Deadpool vibe because he's a complete goof who's not self-impressed, but he's capable. Like, he can do stuff, but he just seems like an idiot. So, yeah.
It's funny you said, because when I was watching Deadpool recently, and I did think, there's a little Jack Hart in that.
That's awesome. I didn't even know who Deadpool was then, I swear. So,
hell, I don't think we knew who Ronald Reynolds was at that point.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah.
Yeah, no, because it was because I remember, I think where it all changed for Jack Hart was that break-in scene and all the Scooby-Doo, chase with all the mercs and everything. And I think at one point you did go,
I totally, yeah, you let me do it. Yeah, I did some stuff that, like, in retrospect, I was like, I gotta be careful because Brett might leave this in.
And I did.
He totally did.
So that really changed the whole dynamic of when you went back in time in the 1940s. We just made you the idiot.
Yeah, that was fun.
Which is funny because you say that, there was I didn't want Jack Hart to be this way because there were so many guys that were confident in this and that. So now when you get back to the 40s, it's like, well, now Jack's the bumbling idiot, blah, blah, blah. But you look around and everybody in the 40s was a bumbling idiot. You had the Brad's character, Jay's character, Amanda's character in a little bit. Scott's character, the German.
Oh, God. Yes. That was funny.
So how was it jumping back into the 1940s before we jump into the future?
Dude, I think probably the 40s segment was probably my favorite portion of anything I did in the saga. And I think it's funny. Okay, so you'll recall I had an eye surgery, like a laser eye surgery, not the LASIK, but like the PRK, which is worse. And I was like, look, I got to film. I'm making a movie, and I've got to be ready to go by like whatever date. And like, oh yeah, you'll be up on your feet in like 2-3 days. Well, 2-3 days later, I was on like Percocet, and so like my eyes were not healing. I was in excruciating pain. So for starters, at the beginning of my journey into the 40s being blind, we went to a little pub style restaurant called Lion and Rose in Alamo Heights area, because we had the actress, we had Sally for like that day, and she was from like Austin or maybe further away. So I would lay there in the booth with my eyes closed because it hurt to open my eyes, and people would read me my lines and then grab me by the hand and lead me to set and then sit me down, and then you did an over the shoulder, and I did the whole scene with my eyes closed, and I actually like got my lines out and didn't slur, and so we shot all of her stuff, and then like 3 months later at a different Lion and Rose location with a different actress sitting in for her, you did her over the shoulder, and it cut together so well, it was in my demo reel. Like, it cut together so well, I actually used the scene. And then I was still blind. We went to go shoot
Is it the warehouse.
The warehouse, and so you had come up with a solution of like writing that I got flash blindness from Tara's boobs. Is this Tara? Mm-hmm. Wow. Whoever made these coins is pretty impressed with your boobs, Jack. Well, we know. I mean, Tara's pretty. Oh. I'm blind, Mike. Tara's boobs blinded me. And so I had to wear sunglasses, and the whole time I'm just looking around kind of like, I just remember kind of being like, I don't know if I knew what was going on because I was still heavily drugged up on like painkillers and Benadryl and anything to like ease the, and I still love that scene, even though like maybe I should be like more impaired more often. Maybe my performance, because I still think it's a funny scene. Like I
love it. I mean, again, because you and I, we had to throw that in. A lot of that wasn't scripted because you weren't supposed to be blind in the script, so it's just ad lib. And I remember there's the German dude got shot by Allison or something, and then I lean over and go,
Bet even you saw that coming.
and that wasn't even planned because you weren't supposed to be blind. So and then you had one too. You came up with the whole I think talking about Sally right in front of Sally. Angel is not Carolyn. Carolyn is this wonderful woman. Angel's all right, and she.
I remember also like, and I wasn't trying to do a shtick. You were supposed to leave through the door frame, and I didn't know you weren't there because I was sitting there with my eyes closed. So I'm saying this long goodbye to you, and you're like,
I was already gone.
let's go with that.
All right, so speaking of time travel, let's jump forward a little bit here to Knight Watchmen. So that's what I had already seen you as Jack Hart. So and we had the one scene but it never made it to film. So it's sort of like lost to memory in a way. So I had a difficult time seeing you in that role, not because of all the other stuff, but because of the violence. And Walter was such a violent, angry character at times. So I kind of had that block. I was like, I don't know if Wes can do this. So we brought you in for the audition, and the audition stuff was great. And I don't remember if at that time I had told you there's like, you got to bring the violent stuff because I'm having a tough time seeing that. But it wasn't until that scene with you and Henry, when you polarized the hell out of him, that I sat behind the camera going, oh my God, this is Walter Baker.
Cool.
He did it. He embraced it. Because a lot of the other stuff was, the scene with you and Isabella in the car, and then when you're, just the cavalier attitude of when when before you guys know who you are, and you're hitting on her after the night, the morning after, and and you're holding the beer and in the some girl stuff.
Definitely not just some girl.
No, not just some girl.
So that makes me...
Some girl?
That was a brutal line.
Great stuff.
That was more brutal than the fight scenes.
It was kind of. But because the original, I had a guy named Rich McDonald played that.
So who is she? And don't you dare say some girl.
She's more than some girl.
So what does that make me?
Some girl.
And actually, Rich went to Hollywood. He was in Generation Kill and a couple other movies and whatnot. So he was kind of Baker in my head. Sure. And then it was that scene, the some girl scene with you, that like made me go, no, this is the new Walter Baker. This is the Walter Baker that's always going to be from here on out. So it was when you pummeled him. And I saw that you be able to do the violence and bring that that into, because it's like Wes would never do that, that kind of a thing. Jack Hart would never do that.
Clearly, you never driven in the car with me. If you wanted to see my violence.
But it was, because it's so, because you and I around each other, it's jokes left and right, and even on set, we have to stop each other sometimes, going, no, that's not. This is a very emotional scene. We can't be talking about wet farts in this scene. Can we move on or whatever?
I'd be emotional in that. Those can hurt.
So from an actor standpoint, how do you get over something like that when somebody's like, I may not see you in this? How do you convince them? How do you earn that chance?
For starters, I am, in retrospect, I wouldn't have had the maturity before to say this, I think, but I'm glad that we never got to do Night Watchmen back, because I was still kind of a brand new actor when we did the saga. And though I go back and I watch it and I don't think that I was terrible, I don't think I was, again, mature enough to have made some of the decisions I made with Walter at this point, because I think I might have been tempted to lean into like the swear to me kind of level of crazy. And I feel like there was a resolve and a stillness in Walter's violence now, like the part where he says that Hordicer doesn't make any difference, and I feel like other times I might have been like, her name was
Batman
Cecilia, and I feel like having just the ability to just have the violence is there. I don't need to shout like I'm about to punch your skull in. I don't need to like scream at you too, kind of thing. As far as how because you did tell me before the audition, And I think even after I got the role, like you were just like, by the way, you're gonna fuck it up. Like, I was like, thanks, Brad. This vote of confidence is underwhelming. I was so confident. Not that I think I'm like the best actor by any means. I was so confident in how much Walter meant to me, how much the character meant to me, that I knew if I just did right by the character and played him in a way that I thought was true to that, I wasn't worried you wouldn't eventually be won over. I knew if I could just stay true to him, that you'd eventually, feel comfortable with it. And thank God I was right. So.
Well, and it's very rare that I'll either admit it or I'll even actually say it. But every time I get the opportunity now, I say I was wrong. You hit it out of the park.
Nice.
And I'm so glad that I was smart enough to trust you.
And honestly, like I don't know if it was the audition or what maybe, like, I guess you already said it must have been the Isabella scenes.
Can I just be clear on one thing?
I would drop down to my knees and praise the Lord God above if it were, in fact, one thing that you wanted to be clear on.
If you look at the reviews, I feel like she gets praise. I don't feel like she gets enough praise because she didn't have as much big stuff to do as the rest of the cast did. Like, you look at Cecilia and even to some degree Walter. It was the worst week of her life, so she was in a very stoic place. Yeah, and I'm like, for what she had to work with, like I think she was the audience. She was the one that we were. She wasn't able. She had to be stoic. She had to be figuring things out. She didn't know. Yeah. She wasn't making the decision. Having a tough time making decisions. And then you throw her up against the Cecilias, the Carloses, and the Bakers. She was just going along, and that's why that when in that very last shot, when she laughs at the bar, that's a great laugh.
It's almost this. It is a to be continued because now we've seen Isabella turn on.
Yeah.
That now we know we're about to, and it was because it was it was a week of her trying to figure it out.
Oh yeah.
And that made it difficult for that character.
Oh yeah.
So I do feel bad for her, for her in that way, but that just happens to be the way that story had to unfold.
She killed it though.
But she was. I mean, she was phenomenal.
I think every one of us had an easier role than she did.
Yeah.
By comparison.
Yeah, because she didn't have a lot to work with in the script, and she had to bring.
Yeah.
I mean, it was all her in the end.
Oh yeah.
It was because she was the exposition character. We had to explain everything to her to be able to explain to the audience. As things continue, if we're able to do more seasons, then we get to really have fun with her character.
Yeah.
Now that we don't have to explain everything to her character.
I'm gonna blackmail you until season 2 happens. I got dirt. It goes back away. I don't tend to go back and watch. I mean, I'm not one of those people who says, "Oh, I never watch stuff that I do," and I hate seeing myself on camera and whatever. Like I look at it as I think it's an arrogant thing to say because what you're basically saying is I'm just so naturally good. I don't have to go. But for me, it's game tape. Like I need to go back and see where I effed up because I'm pretty sure I did somewhere. So I'll watch my stuff, but usually I watch it once or twice, and then that's kind of it. I don't go back and rewatch it. I have watched Knight Watchmen so many times, and it's not because I think I'm terrific or whatever. It's the dynamic. It's the core cast. I think so many people did a great job acting in it, but the main Watchmen group, and even what Chris did with Johnson, it's just so watchable and entertaining to me over and over again, and I really never get tired of it. But the Johnson thing, I'd sent you that message about. I was in whenever I go to a hotel, like if they have Tubi, I always put on Knight Watchmen. And I stopped it and freeze framed that scene where I'm having the fight with Johnson, and I sent you a message with a screen capture. I said, "Remember that time when he sat in the corner and filmed me slapping around the sweaty Johnson?" I sent that to Chris, and he was like, "Ugh." He didn't even laugh. He was like,
did I say something like, "Oh, that's just a regular Tuesday"?
Yeah, it was. Like that. Yes, that was your response.
All right, since this is called "What Went Wrong," can you think of any? I'll give you mine, and then I'll pass it over to you about what went wrong on Night Watchmen. Now, my first one that I'm gonna slam up there is we rented the place or we were in there and toured the little, we'll call it the studio. In, I think early April or end of March or something. And it was fine. It was great. So this will be great. This will be wonderful. And we saw a little AC unit in the window up at the top there. Forgetting that we were going to be shooting like June, July.
Yeah.
In Texas. In a little concrete building. With no circulation.
Yeah.
And a little wall unit.
And a really creepy bathroom setup.
Yeah.
That was...
Yeah, because it had locks, and then as it progressed, like by week 2, there was no lock. We had to lift up the door to keep it from falling off, and that was it was a disaster.
The place saw better days.
It was I mean, we couldn't have done it without that place, but that place, I mean, it melted everybody. I mean, I have shots of actresses just hanging over the air sea units that are just trying to get a little bit of air. And we brought in fans, and because there was like 2 doors, one in the big, one in the front, one in the back. Even those little portable units that we got, we couldn't use because we used them, but they didn't really do any good because you had to have the hose. They would go to the outside to be able to put the hot air out. All we could do was just move the hot air to the next room. Yeah. And then it would just wind up circulating and again. So that was a disaster. Yeah. So that is the big what went wrong for me, is that I think that made it a miserable experience in time for so many people.
That would be the biggest, yeah.
So, what anything else ring up to you?
I was 1,000%. That was going to be my number one, was the heat, because there's scenes like where I'm in the bar throwing darts, and I'm just like, looks like I just got out of the shower. For me, it was a fairly smooth shoot, just because I was enjoying it so much, and other than the heat, I can't think of. I mean, you're the maestro. Like, what else can you think of?
It was such a whirlwind. I mean, I do remember there was a time that because it was just, I mean, Joey was a huge help, but it really, I mean, there was a lot of just me when it came to the producing and trying to do the casting and this stuff. On set, Joey was indispensable. I could not have been without Joey, because when you're on set, he's there, he does everything. But casting and producing and locations, that's not his thing. So that was a lot me. And by I think it was like we were about halfway through, or maybe just a couple weeks left or something. I mean, I was just at the end of my rope. I mean, I was mentally gone, and at one point I do remember that I almost broke down on set just because it was just this mounting thing, and then 2 actors didn't show up. And they were like mercs. Yeah. And it was just such a minute little thing, but it was the straw that broke the camel's back. Yeah. And it was just like, because everything else had been mounting. It was just like,
you handled it well. We never, none of us ever knew.
So yeah, and so I mean, that was a big thing. It was so much on just that one person. Yeah. But other than that, I mean, we were able to use that new camera, and that was that was a lifesaver because it's shot raw, so we were able to be a little bit more relaxed on lighting and not having to make sure that everything was perfect, because when you shoot in raw, you have a little bit more dynamic range and you can edit it a lot more. You have more control over the light, the brightness and the color balancing. So I could just get the shot and go, it's good, I can fix it in post, kind of a thing. Gotcha. You normally don't want to do that, obviously, but because you're shooting raw, you have the ability to do that. So it allowed us to move on faster. Yeah. And probably, especially for that time, chronologically speaking, for my films, it was probably the best cast I've worked with. Yeah. Because everybody was there. I don't remember any time on the Night Watchmen ever having to sit around and wait for people to get their lines down. Well, okay, there was one, and I put the fear of God into him. But that was the thing, was even when he did, even though he did forget his lines, he hit it out of the park. Yeah. And it was perfect, exactly what I needed on that set. So it was a great time, the best of times, the worst of times.
Yeah.
You know, the heat, you know, the stress, but the cast and the lighting and the story just all came together perfectly. So it was one of my favorites. And yeah, I mean, if we, you know, would like to do it again with a little bit more money and continue to season 2 and 3.
Makes us sound like hitmen.
That's what we are, aren't we? Hitmen for the good guys.
You say that like I enjoy killing people, don't you? I enjoy killing bad people.
It chills me out. And trust me, you want me chill.
Before we get out there, I need to know what you're prepared to do.
My name is Isabella Montoya. I'm the local watchman. I have a psychotic murder ninja and a drunken chauvinist, and my life depends on them both.
Do your job, or more people are going to die.
From the Innocent Saga to Night Watchmen, how do you feel that you yourself and, you know, Not So Sane, or, you know, from the Ponders Productions days, the differences, you know, of how, you know, you and the company have grown or changed, or what the differences, because you kind of said that, you know, you're glad we didn't do Night Watchmen back in the day.
Yeah.
What was the difference between then and now, and how can somebody can learn from that?
Yeah, so as far as from the acting standpoint, like I said, a lot of us, when we all started out at the same time, young actors, pretty much untrained and everything, I feel like you have this temptation to just do something, do more. And a lot of people, when I was starting out, you know, on other productions, they would fight and scrape and scramble for more lines and more to do. And I at least had enough awareness of like, that's not necessarily the best way to go, that I would actually say, could I say less? Could I just do a look? Could I just, you know, like, I'm cool for minimalism, right? And I think that I still, though, I might have had the wherewithal to say less, but I think my delivery was still going to be to do something, do more, do bigger. And I think that Walter Baker would have suffered from that if I would have done him 12 years ago, whatever many years ago. So I think getting comfortable enough to be subtle, you know, I think that's something that actors, especially newer ones, can really take away from this maybe. As far as the production company from the Ponderous days till now, one of the things I will say, and I don't feel bad saying this because I've heard you say it multiple times. I think you used to say, you know, can you see the actors? You know, are they lit? Okay, let's shoot. But you couldn't always see the actors, especially some of the black and the white stuff in the 40s. I was kind of like, is that who's in that frame? So definitely, like, that quality is definitely leaps and bounds further than it was during the saga. But I still like the pacing. The pacing hasn't really slowed down for Not So Sane. I like shooting at a fast pace. It keeps the excitement up and the energy up. So, yeah.
I certainly don't want to be on set all day. I mean, I enjoy shooting, but I don't. You know, I want to get on to the next thing now, because I'm an editor. I love the editing, so it's like shooting is just sort of like I got to do that. And I think that's why I work with so many friends.
Yeah.
Is because or if there's actors that I think are assholes, I won't usually work with them again, because I don't enjoy production.
Yeah.
And when I'm working with friends, it makes it tolerable. It's
Right.
like when I was doing that short film, because we got the camera, and I needed to do some little short film just to kind of rehearse or practice with it. I had Matt write that little short film, Pickups, which was just about, you know, a director trying to get, you know, his crew back together to do pickups. And when I'm getting ready to shoot it, you know, okay, well, Matt and Ryan are coming in this weekend. I got to shoot pickups. God, I don't want to do this. I got to wake up early, and I got to set up tripods and lights and all this. But when I get on set, you know, with guys like Matt and then, you know, and Ryan, it's I have a great time. You know, it's fun, it's enjoyable, and then I get to go home, and then I get to have fun again by editing and everything.
Yeah.
But there are days where you just like, I don't want to shoot. It just isn't what I love doing anymore.
Yeah.
I love the writing, I love the editing, but the shooting, I'm just
Gotcha.
it's tough for me now. So that's one of the reasons I do enjoy it, just getting fast. Plus, especially if I'm paying by the day or paying by the hour, I got to get this done. But that has always been the way, because it was just sort of, to me, it was just like, look, you're gonna say the line, say it 3 or 4 times from different angles. How many more times do I have to shoot it? How different is it going to be?
Right.
Just say the lines, let's get it done. And, you get the point across,
Yeah.
But, if we have time, then I get to do a little bit of cinematography and try some little things in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think too many people make a big show out of production.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And they enjoy production because they get to be on set and they're the boss and everything is here because of me. And me, I'm just like, hey, welcome to home. Shoot this, get the fuck out.
Yeah. the best projects I've ever done have always been like 2-man crews, like super lean budgets. I like that way. I like shooting that way. But it's funny you're talking about kind of dreading production. So I did a short film, a short medieval comedy called Damsel, and they did some crowdfunding. And if you put in a certain amount, one of the levels was you get to be an extra in it. And basically it was like the brute squad. If you put money in, you got to be in the cave scene with a weapon. And so this buddy of mine put in some money. I didn't even know he did it, and I find out he's all excited because he's never been on set with me before. So he's going to come and be one of the extras. And so he's like all excited. And he's in his costume. And he's got his weapon, and he's like, "Okay, what now?" I'm like, "Okay, we'll just sit there and wait until we call you." Okay, so finally he's sitting. He's like, "Man, I should have brought some beer or something." And so they call him, and he goes and he does his thing, and then they go back and they stick him back in this little broom closet, which was like our staging area. And he spent so much time sitting around, and then he'd come and they use him for a few minutes and then stick him back in this little cage. And finally, it was like 1 o'clock at night when we wrapped, and he is just in the worst mood. And we had ridden together, and I was on the way home. He's like, "Why do you do this? This is insane. This is the worst thing ever. Oh my God, you're an idiot." And I said, "Okay, understood." But here's what's going to happen. I said, "Tomorrow you're going to wake up and be like, man, that sucked. I guess it wasn't that bad, but it still sucked." And I said, in about 4 days, you're going to be like, yeah, that wasn't so bad. I said, and then about like a week or two, you're going to be like, oh my God, that was the most awesome experience ever. It's like you forget the battle wounds the more you get out from production, and you don't remember, like, I remember it was hot when we shot Knight Watchmen, but I don't have that sense memory anymore. Like, I don't feel it anymore.
I was just about to say that, because we're always shooting movies in the summer and it's hot in Texas.
Yeah.
And I can remember, like even Tag Conspiracy, we're in a hot warehouse and everybody's sweating. But when you sit and you watch the movie, you don't feel that heat, and it kind of jerks away, and all you see is what's in that box, and that's what you remember. So that's a very good point.
You remember the on-set banter and the off-camera jokes, and you go and watch it and you're like, oh, that was an ad-lib. Oh, that we threw that in there. Oh, that we came up with that on the day. And that's one of the things I will say for the saga, for better or worse, you let me ad-lib a ton. Maybe you shouldn't have. On Knight Watchmen, you still let me do a lot of ad-libbing, but I knew there was a level of trust you were giving me there. So I still... My go-to would probably be to do like goofy ad-libs, because I'm always about like, hey, let's have fun, let's laugh, whatever. So I try to make sure anything I threw in served Walter, right? So like the part where I have the fight with Carlos and he's walking off, and I'm starting to walk in, I turn around and go, "You hit like a bitch." And but it was kind of funny, but it was also like
it was Walter.
He would say this, yeah. Even like the one little thing where like I'm beating Johnson, favorite pastime, and just the part where like he's kind of starting to do this thing where like Chris in the moment really did kind of like drift away, like like this crap, and I grabbed him and just shook him. I just said, "Listen," and it wasn't a funny ad lib, but again, it just felt
it felt natural.
It felt Walter-y. Yeah. So, but yeah, I love that you let us kind of take the bumpers off and just kind of explore it.
Yeah,
makes me feel much more in touch with the character.
Yeah. And I think some of the, but to your credit, when you did do the goofy ad libs or whatever, you always waited until the scene was over and I was just about to call cut, and then you'd slide them in there. All right, so any last words you want to say about Night Watchmen?
Go watch it. No, it was man. I'm probably still my favorite project to date. I still think it's the most fond memories I have of anything I've ever done. So I loved it.
Yeah. Definitely, of all the projects that I've done, I want to do and continue that as a series more than any other.